Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Gameplay Analysis. So, what this is going to be is I'm going to get one of my friends to record themselves playing Apex, and then I'm going to go in without having seen the footage before, even though I might have been there while they recorded it, and I'm going to kind of react to the gameplay, analyze it, see what they're doing right, go over the decisions, and whatnot. So we are starting things off with Harry, Potato Dab 261, and yeah, while we were getting ready to play, we determined that while I was going to be there, I wasn't going to like call any of the shots or make any decisions, um, and that it would basically be just up to Harry, and we'd warm up for a bit. So I'll start by analyzing this warm up. Here we go. So one of the first things I noticed here, and I know Harry has never really been one for hipfire, but you really have to perfect your hipfire. You have to perfect strafing, because if not, you're just going to not win those close range fights. Like, you can hipfire with practically any weapon, and Harry's told me before that I'll only use one times on an R301, so you really just have to practice getting up close to these dummies in the firing range, strafing back and forth, hipfiring. And also before every game, like we're doing here, you kind of want to go in, practice with different weapons, practice your aim, and make sure that you're prepared for the session. It's also worth noting that while you're warming up, you want to do it with as few or no attachments on your weapons, because you're then going to get used to playing with those attachments, and you're not always going to have a gold mag or a purple stabilizer on hand. So if you're used to or good at playing with just the base level weapon, that's great, and then when you do find those attachments, it's just going to help you be even better. So practice without attachments on your weapons. Alright, so we're going to start off with the first game here. This was all captured during the Genesis Collection event, so it's not the current maps, but we picked World's Edge because it's similar enough to the one today, where you can practice those rotations and learn how to rotate well. So Harry is a Lifeline main, and one of the things you always want to be doing is Lifeline, and it's kind of your main purpose when you're playing that character, is you really have to go for those revives. You really have to know when to revive, where to revive, so you just have to kind of practice those in-game so you get the most value you can out of Lifeline. Now, whenever you're dropping in, the first thing you always want to do is check the map. That way you can see the path of where the dropship is going, you can see where the hot zones are, and you can kind of figure out where you're going to land from there, because it's kind of hard to see everything if you're just sitting in that ship. So if you're, it depends on your playstyle where you want to land, but if you're like a mid-tier player and you're semi-aggressive, those hot drops that are a bit farther away from the path of the dropship are those places where you really want to land, so Sorting Factory was a good choice here. So you always want to coordinate with your team where you're going to land, so Harrison splits off and takes this side of the building while I go and take the other. And you really want to practice on, yep, there's that sliding, which is good, but you have to loot quickly, especially if you know there are other squads here. So you really have to be picking up loot quick, moving out of an area quick, and registering what's there quick. That's a lot of quicks. So you also want to look for weapons that you can use. You don't necessarily have to find your favorite weapons right off the drop, just as long as you know you can use a certain weapon, and that you're not going to just get absolutely destroyed with it. That's good. So yeah, once you've got your first bit of loot, then just kind of coordinate with your team what else is in that area, grab what you need, and then you can make your first push. Now, finding good optics is always important, especially if you're using a gun like the G7, where the iron sights are incredibly hard to use, or also switching off to the R9. You kind of want to have some range in your loadout, both close-range weapons. That's fine if you're going to push a lot of fights, and if you have movement characters to get you in there, but we don't necessarily have that in this team comp. You always want to make sure that you're constantly stacked up on meds, especially if you have room in your backpack like you did here. It's worth carrying just that extra battery, because you're never going to know when you need it, and that extra ammo as well. So just, yeah, I always go for like 4 or 6 batteries, 8 cells, 4 syringes, 2 medkits, and a Phoenix kit. So just don't leave empty space in your backpack. So now that you're moving out, you know there are people here. You see that bin where people have been, so call that out to your team, and then stick together here. So I kind of got a bit far off on my own, so you just kind of want to play together with your team so you win if you suddenly get pushed. Now I'll throw out my smoke here as I start getting shot at by the other team, and we are going to be going into our first fight. So the thing you always want to do in a fight is take the high ground. You're kind of far away from them, you don't really have the best cover, and especially if you have close range weapons like you do, you really have to be playing up close to them. And you see I'll go and take that high ground, so you gotta stick with your team and take advantageous positions when you're in fights like this. I would have moved to the back of the pole here to get off a quick shield cell, and you would have probably been able to get your shields a little bit higher before that path came up. Now, when you see this Loba come up here, that is where I probably would have hip fired, so you would have been able to react to the pathfinder behind you. But we do eventually go down here, but that's okay. We got a pretty good fight in, and we picked up some tips from it. Now, when you drop, the goal is to get down as quick as you can so you can loot before your enemies. And if you just go on an angular pattern like this, you're not going to be moving as fast as you could be. So what happens when you dive down, your speed will increase. So if you do quick dives and then level out, you'll be able to actually land faster than you will do if you just follow this straight pattern here. So do quick dives and then level out as you're landing so you can land much quicker. Now you really got to fine-tune your movement and find a sensitivity that works for you so you don't end up running into objects like you do here. And as you get scanned, your first objective there should be to go for a weapon. I believe I saw Mozambique down there. So you shouldn't be as concerned about meds right now, as you know there's a Bloodhound right next to you. So try and find weapons, especially if there's someone that you are afraid of getting pushed from. So you'll see here, I'm kind of a bit out to the side. So what you want to do here is you want to regroup. What you do, I go down right away, and then you get shot from behind. So just get to cover in this situation. You know, there are people here, so you have to be careful. Again, another one of those situations where I probably would have hip fired. But that's alright. We weren't going to win that fight anyways. So on to the next clip. Now, another thing you can do when you're dropping, especially if the location is as close to the path of the ship as it is here, is you can kind of wait until the ship gets a bit closer, and then you can drop straight down, because you will get that extra speed. So just really look into the ways that you can drop quicker, because you're going to win more early game fights if you can get better loot. So landing on a weapon, always a great idea, especially if you can pinpoint one that you want to use while you're dropping in. And so, yeah, you just want to kind of loot as quick as you can. So, great use of sliding here to get more momentum. And, yeah, let's keep going. I'm probably going to skip through most of the looting as there isn't much to talk about, but there are a few things I want to highlight. So one of the things I do want to talk about is you usually want to stick with a couple weapons. You seem to be switching a lot here, which is fine if you want to use a specific weapon. But you need to be able to find attachments and have plenty of ammo for whatever weapons you're using, so you don't want to be switching them too much. Also, using two weapons of the same type of ammo usually isn't the best idea. Sometimes it'll work, like if you're using G7, which doesn't consume as much ammo, and an alternator, but I probably would have gone for the G7 and Devo here, even though the Devo isn't that good without the turbocharger. If you carry the Devo, you're going to be looking for a turbocharger, and then you're going to be able to use it much more effectively. So running in this building, good work pinging ammo for your team, especially for something like the Bocek that you're not going to be finding as much ammo for. Also highlighting that armor for your team is always good. So just pinging loot to keep your team stocked up is always a good idea, so good work there. So, as your teammate calls in the airstrike here, you kind of want to stick together, stick behind cover, and be ready to push in case they get hit. But you know with that airstrike and them not getting hit that they're going to be inside a building or under cover of some sorts. So you now have the advantage here, so just be prepared to capitalize on that. So as you spot them going into that building, and pop a few shots off, that's good. Always keeping them under pressure is a good idea. Just try and reload behind cover because you're really vulnerable while that is occurring. and kind of stick with your team, rotate with your team so you don't get caught out like you did here. And you also want to be practicing the recoil of weapons, so you don't miss some shots like you did there. And like I said, without attachments, because you didn't have a barrel stabilizer, or a purple one for that matter there. So just get used to weapons without attachments so you're able to use them much more effectively. Now, going up to take this high ground is a good idea. You just have to be careful that you don't miss that zip line and get caught out. The alternator, probably not the best choice there. I'd probably just run for it, as you're going to miss those shots most likely, and just waste ammo and time. So as you have to smoke and the choke point with that zip line, you're able to heal up here. So it's a great idea throwing down that drone and taking a shield cell. Good play there. Because the only way that team is getting up to you, unless they have a horizon or something, and still you're going to hear that, is up that zip line. So you're going to be able to hear that and know when they're pushing, so you can kind of just chill off. Now you crack one there, which is good, and then you have to be careful that you're strafing to the left and the right instead of forward and backwards, as you're still going to get hit forward and back. But if you're left and right, you're not going to get hit as much. So kind of stay down while you're taking meds, as you really don't want to get shot at while you're using those. And good idea checking if you're getting flanked from behind. And good work keeping sights on them and keeping that pressure on them, because you do not want them escaping. So you'll see they'll start to come up the zipline here in shadow form. That was a really, really bad play on their part. So good job knocking them back to the totem and getting that heal off. However, what I would have done here is, now that they're back at the totem and at half health, they're going to be weak, they're going to be healing. So I would have actually gone in for the push there, because that would have been an easy fight to clean up. So just don't be afraid to push fights like that, because you're then going to have loot. You're going to have one less team to worry about. So yeah. Nice job trying to call your care package down here, although now that you know that team is most likely left, it would actually probably be safe to drop down and maybe even go to the care package you can see on your minimap, because that way you're going to get the loot from 2 of them, and it's going to be less of an attention caller, as people already have that care package coming down. So one of them decides to come up here for whatever reason. Good job trying to thirst there for your team. Watch that silence and that revenant. You gotta put a lot of time into practicing your aim if you want to win fights like that. And I also would have opened that fight hip firing instead of only doing it at the end, because you would have been able to hit more shots.
Recharging my shields.
It's always a good idea to heal up right after a fight, especially in a choke point such as this, because you never know when you're going to get pushed again. Right off the bat, there's another team down there. You still have the advantage on them, so sticking on this high ground here is a great play, especially since you don't know what kind of armor they have, what characters they're playing yet, or if they're weak or not. Now, I kind of skipped through a lot of that, but it might have been worth it to call down a care package down there as bait. But you do know that they are going to have to push toward you at some point, because you have that ring moving in. So you have to decide if you want to stay there or if you want to make a push for ring. So as your teammates pinging them, it probably would have been worth it to go over to the other side and start aiming on them, so you could have maybe gotten a few shots off before they get up there. The airstrike comes down to keep them on one side of the thing. You can push through the airstrike without taking damage, you just will get the stun effect. Over there, I would have definitely used your G7 as they're moving away, just so you would have been able to get some extra range and hit more shots. You got a nice hit over there. Call out that they have blue body armor, so you know that you have better armor than at least one of them. As the smoke goes out, you know that they're either not going to be able to see out of that, or they're going to have to move out of it, so you're able to hit another shot, which is good. So just keep watching what they're doing, monitoring their position, and get prepared, because you're eventually going to have to make a push towards ring. You do have to keep in mind, though, that back in Season 3, this was the choke point, so you're going to get pushed by another squad at some point, like you do. Be careful, as they seem to have a sniper of some kind, so you just want to be moving a bit more and not staying still and scoping in as much. So right here is where I would have probably made the rotation as they seem to be going one way. Stay out of range of those Valk missiles and watch from behind. Your teammate's pinging for you to move, so you really have to be aware and on top of what is going on. So you just kind of sat up there. You had plenty of time to make a rotation, but you were a really easy target for them. Your teammate was pinging for you to move away from them. So just constantly be aware of what's going on, pay attention to where your teammate is, keep tabs on the pings, so you don't get caught out on your own like you did there. So yeah, that's about it. There really isn't much left for me to go over. I kind of wish we got some longer games in so I could kind of go over your rotations and your positioning end game. But who knows, maybe in the future you'll come back, we'll analyze more gameplay. So let me know down below if you want me to analyze your gameplay. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.